The adolescent mind is the source of pushing away from the status quo. Now, why do we do that? Because evolutionarily, we have to take what adults give us and say, you know, I'm going to try it a different way. I'm going to create a new world. Why is that important? Well, it's important because if we're going to adapt to an ever-changing world, let's face it, as adults, what do? We specialize, we find our niche. We do what we do, we're exhausted. We just want to come home and watch some TV and just keep things just as they are, right? Everything's all right. But if an adolescent were going to be like that, we would never survive as a human family. The major innovations in art, in music, in technology, and science come from adolescent minds. But what do we do? What do we do to support that innovation? Nothing, really. We cram them into these regulated study programs where you're supposed to do these pre-established tests. We do very little to tap into this innovation. Creative explorations are fantastic for the individual and the human family. What's the downside? You can feel really disoriented and out of sorts. So here are some of the myths that this essence busts. Number one, adolescence is not the same as the teenage years. The remodeling of the adolescent brain happens by a process that goes from around 12 to 24, mid-20s. Even later, some studies are now showing. So it doesn't just end. Now, what is this remodeling all about? The remodeling is about pruning the brain, cutting circuits down, and myelinating the brain. We were shocked to find how much pruning is going on. What does that pruning explain? The pruning explains, we believe, why major psychiatric disorders have their onset during the second dozen years of life. Because the pruning carves away vulnerable circuits, vulnerable either by genetics, epigenetic regulatory issues, or experiential causes like abuse or neglect. So it's not just the teenage years. That's number one. Number two, raging hormones. That's a myth. If it were raging hormones, there'd be nothing you could do about it. But because it's the remodeling of the brain, and what's the goal of remodeling? Believe it or not, and I didn't say this, this is in all the research, you can read it yourself, the goal of remodeling of the adolescent brain is to differentiate regions through pruning, link them through myelinating, so it's to increase integration. And I blew my mind. Integration is the goal of adolescent brain development, so I gave these mind-sight skills that have been proven to increase integration in the brain. So I said, why shouldn't an adolescent have this when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, onward, to do the mind training practices that are proven to integrate the brain? Because that's what the goal of adolescence is all about anyway. Increase integration to create more harmony in your life, both neurologically and relationally, right? Another myth is that it's only because kids are impulsive. No, it's because of this dopamine change and hyper-rational thinking that risks are taken. And the final thing I want to just say in terms of the myths, people think, well, adolescence is a period of immaturity. You just got to grow up. You got to push away from all adults and just make it all on your own. These are myths that are destructive. Adolescents need adults in their life, maybe not parental adults. We, as a psychotherapy community, need to change the cultural conversation around adolescence because we need to figure out a healthy, safe way of having non-parental adults be mentors in adolescents' life that barely exists in our society. It's desperately needed, number one. Number two, we need to realize that this essence of adolescence, the emotional spark, the social engagement, the novelty, the creative explorations, is not tapped into in our society. We are ignoring the essence of adolescence, and we can restructure how families approach adolescence and realize this is not a period just to get over. That's a myth that's destructive. It's not just raging hormones, it's a remodeling brain, and the difference is, from neuroplasticity studies, we can inspire people to rewire their brains toward integration. We, as therapists, are in an incredibly important position to support the change in the cultural conversation. And for adults, think about it now, and I'll conclude with this. How many adults do you know in your practice or in your personal life, or maybe even in your own body, who have given up many elements of the essence of adolescence? A lot of people. But if you look at neuroplasticity studies of the adult brain and had to pick the top 4 factors of what keeps your brain young, your brain, sitting in that seat, your brain young as an adult, it would be keep passion in your life with an emotional spark. Keep yourself engaged with important connecting relationships of these micro moments of love and deep relationships with social networks of support. Social engagement. Have novelty in your life and have creative explorations where you're challenging your mind and not just sticking with the same old, same old.